Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies. Today we're going to be discussing the second installment of World War I, and we're going to name that From Neutrality to War. So why did the United States not enter the war at the beginning? Well, the Great War was quickly spreading its way across Europe. That's an important piece of information when we discuss the reasons why the United States was not willing to enter the war immediately. The war was not fought on American soil, nor were Americans in immediate danger, so it did not make sense for the United States to send millions of troops off to another continent to die. However, here are three pretty good reasons why America stayed out of the war for so long. First, the United States is a nation full of immigrants. It's true that the nation had ties to Britain based on our history, language, and trade. It was difficult for the United States to pick a side. Remember that even though the British settled America first between 1840 and 1860, nearly 2 million Germans and even Austrian Hungaries immigrated to America, leaving the president in a predicament. Does he choose Britain and the Allied powers or Germany and the Central Powers? The answer up front was easy: neither of them. The second reason why the United States did not join the war was because the fighting was at a stalemate. This meant that there was no clear side winning the war. If the United States was able to see the momentum swinging one way in the war, they may have joined on that side, effectively guaranteeing a quicker victory. And the final reason why America did not join the war at the beginning was trade. Near the beginning of the war, France and Britain struggled against Germany, and the United States felt that it should continue trade with all of those nations. If the United States tried to stay a neutral nation, it would not be able to place an embargo or trade restriction on one country and still trade with its adversary. That would make the United States lose its neutral status. Some economists also believe that if the United States stopped trading with Europe, the economy would crumble. So as the war progressed, the United States began to trade more with the Allied forces. American cargo ships would carry supplies and war materials to Britain and France. As American trade increased with Britain, the British Navy set out to effectively stop German maritime trade. The largest navy in the world set up a blockade around German trade ports, and Britain succeeded in shutting down the German supply trade. The blockade had a larger effect on the war than what was predicted originally. In 1850, a German engineer named Wilhelm Bauer invented a new type of ocean vessel that Germany would continue to perfect and would revolutionize naval warfare as we know it. Bowers invented the submarine, which in German was called the Unterseeboot and abbreviated to the U-boat. The U-boat was the only way that Germany felt that they could outmaneuver the British blockade, and it worked. Germany used the U-boats to escape through the British blockade and attack Allied battleships and supply lines, only to slip away undetected. It was these U-boat attacks that helped many Americans who were on the fence decide if they supported the Allied or Central Powers, with the majority choosing the Allied. Germany attempted to compromise with Britain and said underwater naval warfare would stop if Britain would lift its blockade. Since America was still not in war, the United States and Germany even struck a deal when Germany agreed not to sink any more American supply ships as long as the U.S. said it was not supporting the British. Unfortunately, Germany did not keep its promise when it continued to sink American supply ships because Germany believed that the United States was supplying the Allied powers with weapons, and they were right. Americans did not care much about the British blockade and undersea German warfare as long as Germany would keep its promise not to sink American ships, which we just learned it didn't, and I'm going to tell you about the passenger ship that changed everything. Passenger travel from America to Europe was not unfamiliar to anyone. Remember, millions of European immigrants still had family in Europe. As a precautionary measure, Germany took out advertising space in American newspapers and put the nation on alert. If you traveled on ships from America to Europe and it carried war supplies, it would risk submarine attack. Enter the story of the British passenger ship the Lusitania. On May 7, 1915, the British passenger liner the Lusitania was making a return trip from New York to Liverpool, England. British command instructed the captain of the ship to take evasive actions on their return trip by zigzagging or sailing around known German U-boat zones. The captain did not heed the warning, and around 2 p.m. the ship was struck by a torpedo and sank off the South Irish coast. On board were nearly 1,200 passengers, with 128 of them being American. The British captain ignored the warning, and Germans killed innocent Americans. This infuriated the American public, and pressure started to grow on President Woodrow Wilson for America to join the war on the side of the Allied powers. The world began to look negatively on Germany, and the American government warned Americans of the risk of overseas travel from then on out. For the next 2 years, President Wilson and his staff argued about the course of action to take with Germany, and deals were promised and broken numerous times. So did the Germans have the right to sink the Lusitania? Well, passing itself off as a passenger liner, no, but it was carrying over 173 tons of munitions, which is weapons and ammunition from the United States to Britain. So that's your call. There are several other factors that helped lead to the American involvement into the war. Germany was practicing unrestricted submarine warfare, and in March of 1916, Germany torpedoed the French passenger ship the Sussex, killing many and wounding 2 Americans. Wilson threatened to sever relations with Germany when in May of the same year, Germany issued the Sussex Pledge, where they promised to give adequate warning before firing on merchant and passenger ships and attending to the safety of the passengers. However, it was a naval vessel. It would be torpedoed without any warning. This lasted until about February of 1917. Germany felt that the United States had shown trade preference to the Allied powers and announced that because of this, they will be returning to a policy of unrestricted submarine warfare, resulting in the torpedoing of any vessel located in the war zone area without warning. Because of this action, Wilson severed relations with the German government. Near the beginning of 1917, the United States and Mexico's relationship was strained. Pancho Villa had entered the United States and raided many southern villages, causing damage and fear, trying to provoke tensions between the two countries. Wilson sent armed troops to Mexico to find and eliminate Villa. Germany took note of this and tried to exploit the strained relationships between the United States and Mexico. At the beginning of the war, the British had severed telegraph lines between Germany and the United States, so any telegram that needed to be sent from Germany through a neutral nation to be received across the Atlantic Ocean. In January 1917, Arthur Zimmermann, Germany's Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, dispatched a telegram to Mexico regarding a deal that traveled through the U.S. Embassy in Berlin. This would become known as the famous Zimmermann Telegram or the Zimmermann Note. Zimmermann sent the telegram to Mexico through the American Embassy, and the British intelligence intercepted the telegram, decoded it, and sent it to President Wilson on February 24, 1917. The note stated that if the United States entered the war against Germany, Mexico would promise to declare war on the United States, and in return, Zimmermann promised Mexico the return of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, parts of the Mexican cession that was lost after the Mexican-American War. In March, the United States published the telegram in newspapers across the country, gaining support for the American people to enter the war. This was a small fraction of Americans of German descent who would oppose the war, and after more German U-boat attacks, President Wilson would use the Zimmermann Note as ammunition to ask Congress to declare war. On April 2nd, 1917, President Wilson addressed Congress with many grievances against the German government. And on April 6, 1917, Congress voted and the United States declared war on Germany with only 2 senators opposing the war effort. So the last thing I'm going to do is going to end you on this right here. This is what a copy of the Zimmerman telegram looked like. It was just, it says German to Mexico City via Galveston, and it's just a series of numbers that needed to be decoded. So when this telegram was intercepted and decoded, this is what the telegram reads. We intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. We shall endeavor, in spite of this, to keep the United States of America neutral. In the event of this not succeeding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis. Make war together. Make peace together. Generous financial support and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The settlement in detail is left to you. All right, guys, we're going to have our 3rd installment, and I'll see you next time.